So as we all know, a lot of money is splashed around in the Championship these days, so what I thought we'd do for a video today is go through every Championship club's most expensive player from this decade, and we'll then be putting them into this tier list. So the categories we got are massive flop, didn't work, okay, good deal, or worth every penny. So if you do guys enjoy, make sure to leave a like, get your thoughts in the comments down below. But without any further ado, let's hop into this one. Starting it out with Nottingham Forest, João Carvalho. Now, he moved over in the summer of 2018 for 13.2 million, a club record fee. And you have to say, he really hit the ground running at Nottingham Forest. His debut season, especially the first half of it, he was producing decent numbers. He got 4 goals, 8 assists. Then towards the end of that season, started to be benched a little bit more by Martin O'Neill, who then came in as manager. He didn't really fit into the system then. And then this season, we've barely seen him play, to be honest, have we? I'm going to throw him into okay. He's been a bit hit and miss in his time at Forest so far. I'll be interested to see if he does stay at Forest past this season, actually. Then we get to Simon Sluga of Luton Town. I think moved over for around about 1.5 million in the summer. To be honest, it's not one that's really worked out so far for the player and the club, obviously. I remember his debut against Middlesbrough, dropped a bit of a clanger in that one, and then throughout the season, I don't think at times he's been helped out by his defence, but there's been multiple occasions where he has, you know, dropped a clanger here and there. You know, that game against Derby away always stands out. He was dropped as their number 1 for a bit as well. Don't get me wrong, it's not all been bad, and he is an easy target to pick at times, but for Sluga, I'm going to put him into didn't work for the time being. For Bristol City, we've got Thomas Callas. Did miss a chunk of this season through injury. Obviously, when they lost Adam Webster, they then looked to reinvest that money into the squad. Spent about £8 million on Callas, so not a cheap one, but judging off, you know, his loan at Bristol City the previous season, I think it was a sensible investment. Given what I think he'll have, you know, quite the longevity while he is at Bristol City, I'm going to put him into good deal. I think they got a good player on their hands there. Brentford's most expensive player, according to Transfermarkt, has been Bryan Mbeumo, coming over for around about £5.8 million. Now, last summer was like the first time when Brentford like really were splashing out the cash. They brought in quite a lot of high-profile players, but Mbeumo, at only 20 years old, and the potential that he has going forward, I think I'm going to have to throw him into that worth every penny top category. I mean, so far this season, he scored 14 goals and got 6 assists, and when you take into consideration the resale value that Brentford are going to have on him, I've got to put him in the top tier. He's been excellent this season. For QPR, we're going back in time a little bit, and to Chris Samba, signed for them on deadline day, January 2013 for £12.5 million. Reportedly, he was on about 100 grand a week as well. I think you all know what I'm going to say about this one. This transfer just did not work out. That QPR squad that he came into was one of the most like dysfunctional teams we've seen in Premier League history. It was an absolute mess. They ended up finishing bottom of the league, getting relegated to the Championship. During his time there, QPR only won 2 matches. The only sort of saving grace from this one was that they actually managed to sell him for £12 million, so didn't really lose that much money on him. I'm going to have to put him into massive flop. This one didn't work at all, did it? With Birmingham, we go to Ivan Sunjic. Sunjic has been an interesting one. I think that he started out really well at Birmingham, has had a couple of inconsistencies here and there, but overall, I don't think Birmingham got a bad deal on him. Considering the age and the pedigree of the player, there's going to be a massive resale value there. But I think the quality that he's shown throughout the season, Birmingham fans know that they got a good player on their hands there. I'm going to throw him into the good deal category, I think. Then we get to Preston North End and to Tom Bayliss. We splashed out around about £2 million on the youngster from Coventry in the summer, and we've not seen much of him, to be honest, so I can't really make much of a judgment on this one. In the Championship, he's made no appearances in the league. We've just seen him in cup competitions. I think that he was one that was bought for the future. In the games that I have seen him playing, you know, he's been fine. He's done nothing wrong. You know, he's a very tidy player on the ball. But ultimately, we've not seen much of him. I'm going to throw him into the okay category because, like I say, we've not seen enough of him to really judge. With Fulham, we're going to Seri, and this one just didn't work. It was a summer where they were promoted to the Premier League. They spent a whole lot of money on trying to reassemble that squad that was promoted, and obviously it didn't work with him. Seri was an interesting one because he did show glimpses of the quality player that he could be. You know, on the ball, he wasn't necessarily a bad player. You could tell he had something about him, but there just wasn't enough there, especially off the ball, to warrant that price tag, really. And he spent this season out on loan at Galatasaray. I'm going to put him into the didn't work category. I may move him down come the end of the video though. I'm between the bottom 2 for him, really. With Blackburn Rovers, we're going back to the days of Jordan Rhodes and when he was like a peak Championship striker. They spent £8 million to get him from Huddersfield, and there's no messing about with this one. He's got to go in that top category. He was different gravy for Blackburn, wasn't he? In his 3 full seasons there, he scored 28 goals, 25 goals, and then 21 goals. And then obviously he went on to leave in January to go to Middlesbrough, where they actually actually made a profit on the player in the end. Between the years of 2012 and 2015, Jordan Rhodes was like untouchable in the Championship, and so for Blackburn, I'm going to have to put him in that top category. He was worth every penny for them. And then for Sheffield Wednesday, we were actually talking about Jordan Rhodes again. After leaving Blackburn to Middlesbrough, he then made the move from Middlesbrough to go to Sheffield Wednesday, and it's fair to say that Sheffield Wednesday have got nowhere near value for money, especially compared to Blackburn. I think they spent about £8 million on him at the time, and his best goal return for them in the league so far has been 5 goals. Last season he was shipped out on loan to Norwich, and then this season he's mustered up 3 goals, all of which came in the same game, and apart from that, he's offered very little while he was there. I'm going to have to put him into that massive flop category because, let's be honest, he has been at Wednesday, hasn't he? For Swansea, we've got Andre Ayew. Now, Ayew's quite an interesting one for them, actually, because he did initially sign for them on a free. He then made the move to West Ham for around £20 million, and the season after moved back to Swansea for a fee in the region of £18 million. His time spent at Swansea has been interesting, I think. You know, his first season there, scored 12 goals for them. It was a really successful one for them. Then obviously made the move to West Ham. He then made his return. Swansea were then relegated to the Championship, and in their first season in the Championship, Ayew was loaned out to Fenerbahce for this season. This season we've seen him back in the Championship though, and has been, you know, one of their best players, if not their best, you know, an integral part of their goal scoring going forward. With 12 goals and 5 assists so far this season, I'm going to put him into a good deal, I think. Hull City was Ryan Mason, and a really unfortunate story about Ryan Mason, really. Obviously, back in the day, a really sort of upcoming, promising English player, and obviously we all know the story. Unfortunately, his career had to be cut short after fracturing his skull in a game against Chelsea, and he was then forced to retire early. He's still only 28 years old, so it really was a shame that that had to be the case. But for Mason, obviously I'm going to have to throw him into that didn't work category, but all the circumstances considered, this one was really a shame that it couldn't work out. With West Brom, we move over to Salomon Rondon. In his 3 seasons with West Brom in the Premier League, he actually finished as their top scorer in the league for each one of them, moved over for £12 million. Considering that when West Brom were in the Premier League, they weren't exactly the most like attack heavy team, the goal return that he actually came back with, I think, was very respectable, and considering they made quite a bit of profit on the player, I'm going to put him into that top category, worth every penny for me. With Leeds, we move over to Helder Costa. Now, he has been on loan for this season, but the deal is set to become permanent, and when it does, for a fee in the region of £15 million, that will be Leeds' most expensive player of the decade. Now, Helder Costa's a bit of an oddball, really. I don't think he's completely lived up to the hype of that first season when he was at Wolves, when he got 10 goals and 8 assists. He was absolutely electric for them. He's got 3 goals and 2 assists for them. As we all know, you know, how well Bielsa likes to work with players. Maybe after a full season of working with Bielsa, we could see a new Costa next season. Does he justify the £15 million price tag? I'm not sure. I'm going to put him into okay for the time being, I think, for Costa. Cardiff City did have a club record fee for Emiliano Sala, but obviously with his tragic passing, we're not going to be judging him, so we're going to be going off Gary Medel instead for Cardiff. He moved over in August 2013 when they were promoted to the Premier League, and to be honest, Gary Medel was actually a really good player for them. He was probably one of their best players that season. He was an absolute pit bull in the middle for them, looking to break up things, intercept play. You could see, you know, he was on sort of a different calibre to some of the other players they had in the squad that season. He moved over for 11 million. In the end, he did only spend 1 season there. They sold him the season after for 10 million, so they only lost £1 million in him. And for the season that they got out of him, despite being relegated, I thought they got a good deal on him, to be honest. I thought he was a really good player for them that season. With Stoke City, we've got Mbula, and this transfer did not work out whatsoever. I think they spent £18 million on him, and in the end, he had more loan moves out from Stoke than he actually scored goals for them. It was a bit of a disaster. His contract was actually terminated this season, meaning that they didn't make any money back from him. Initially, to be fair to him, he did look quite promising, but yeah, things went sour quite quickly. With Millwall, we're going to Ryan Leonard, who I believe is their club record signing of the decade. I might be wrong with that one because Millwall don't disclose their transfer fees. I know that Tom Bradshaw and Conor Mahoney were also bought for a very similar amount. Mahoney might have actually eclipsed this one, but we'll go off Leonard because I know at the time it was announced as a club record deal. He's been a bit of an interesting one, obviously. His time at Sheffield United didn't really work out for him. He then made his move over to Millwall on loan initially, and then that move was made permanent. This season he had missed quite a chunk of it through injury, but before that I thought his performances did start to pick up a little bit. I'm going to throw him into okay for the time being. For Derby, we're then going over to Christian Bielik. His move costing them around £8 million, which could rise up to 10 with add-ons. Another player who unfortunately has also missed a chunk of the season through injury, but prior to that injury, I thought his performances were really starting to pick up actually. Quite a diverse player for the fact he can play either at the back or in defensive midfield. In defensive midfield, he really was starting to run the show for Derby. Long term, considering his age, he's only 22 years old, I do think Derby have got a good deal there. With Charlton, we got Vita Keeley, moved over for around, I think, over £2 million. His debut season for Charlton, he was absolutely absolutely excellent. In the 14-15 season, scored 11 goals for them, got 9 assists as well. If I was judging it solely off that season, then I'd put him straight into that good deal category. But after that, then it started to tail off a little bit. Obviously, Charlton were then relegated to League One. He then had 3 different loan spells out to the Belgian league. I think by that point he had become a little bit injury prone. Did feature for them last season. I think once again also struggled with injuries and then ultimately was let go on a free. For the transfer overall, I'm going to put him into okay, considering they only really got like 1 full proper season out of him, but that first season he was really good for them. And then we move on to Reading and to George Puskas. Now, I was really scratching my head for this one as to where do I place him, because Puskas has been such an odd one so far this season, because he's had some absolutely unbelievable games and he's had, you know, several games where he's missed some absolute gilt-edged chances and he's fumbled some sitters. Considering it's his first season in English football, his goal return, it isn't bad, to be honest. There have actually been recent rumours coming out linking him away from the club, which would be a shame if he only had 1 season in England. I still think there's quite a high sell-on value there. Maybe controversially, I'm going to put him into good deal. I could see why you'd put him lower than that. Luke Thomas for Barnsley's got an interesting one. He's had a bit of a mixed bag as well as his debut season. He moved over from Derby in the summer so far this season, scoring just the 1 goal and grabbing the 4 assists to go along with that. It's still quite early days for Thomas in his career. Obviously, they've still got a lot of potential there, but for the time being, I'm going to throw him into okay. I think they definitely got a player on their hands there. Then we get to Terence Kongolo of Huddersfield. Now, in his first season for Huddersfield in the Premier League, I thought he was really good. He looked like well worth the money for them. But then obviously we get to this season where it did look like in the Championship he had like down tools a little bit, and obviously we then saw him being loaned out to Fulham. I'm going to put him into okay, I think, for the whole package. I can see why you'd put him higher than that. I'm interested to see how much money they'll get back from him when they actually do go on to sell him. With Wigan we go to Ivan Ramis, I believe brought in under the Martinez era when they were in the Premier League. He was actually a really good player for them. I remember him scoring an absolute belter of a goal. It was against West Ham in the Cup. The only thing that really went wrong during his Wigan career was that he was quite injury prone. You know, in the 3 years he spent there, he made just 49 appearances. It was a shame because had he stayed fit during that Premier League season, you know, Wigan may not have gone down. His contract was ultimately cancelled by mutual consent. Overall, I'm going to put him into okay, but I could see an argument for bumping him up. Then finishing it off with Middlesbrough's Britt Assombalonga, made the move over to Boro in 2017 for a fee of around about £15 million from Nottingham Forest. Now, Assombalonga is such a hot and cold striker. He's a hard one to put into this, really. 50 million is a lot of money, but to be fair to him, in his first 2 seasons there, he did finish as their top scorer in each of them, scoring 15 in his debut season and 14 the season after. Playing under Tony Pulis, that's not a bad return, but he was brought in to score goals, to be fair to him. I'm gonna put him into the good deal category. Assombalonga, like I say, he's a really unorthodox one. He's a tricky one to judge. But as you can see there, guys, there are my rankings for every Championship club's most expensive signing of the decade and how I would grade them. Let me know down below if you'd move any of them about. But there we have it, guys. That will wrap it up for today's video. So if you did go on to enjoy, please do leave a like and get all your thoughts in the comments down below. But apart from that, make sure to go on and subscribe for a bit of regular Championship content, and I'll see you all in the next one.